thank you very much for joining to our next podcast. We have the pleasure to have Amy here from MCB. We really appreciate you taking the time. I know that the schedule in the summer could be crazy with family and work and combining the two.
That's what you love about Baltimore in the summer.
There you go. I always tell people with global warming, Baltimore is going to be the next Florida, and I could definitely tell you global warming's affected us this year.
Yes, it has, especially today. But thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Our pleasure. And to really start this off, tell us more about yourself, because for some of the listeners may know you, some may not. Give us a little bit about how did you get into with MCB? Where did you start off?
So I moved to Baltimore right after college. I was kind of a planning geek, and I followed the dollar house story of, this first opened and just thought it was the most magical place I'd ever seen. So I moved here I grew up in New England. I moved to Baltimore, and I just fell in love with the city. I was lucky to work for a nonprofit called the Neighborhood Design Center, where I worked on over 100 neighborhood revitalization projects over a 3-year span. And that was an incredible introduction to the city and the people that make our neighborhood special. And I was hooked.
Wow. Which neighborhoods did you focus on at the time?
We worked all over. So I worked in Fells Point. I worked in the heart of West Baltimore. I worked in a little neighborhood called Harwood. That's in central Baltimore, Sandtown, Winchester, pretty much all over.
Wow. So what, coming from out of state, getting into Maryland, what attracted you to Maryland specifically? Was there like an internship that brought you down?
I just came, and fortunately I got this job at the Neighborhood Design Center, and that just kicked it off for me. So.
Wow. I always tell people that move to Baltimore, it's typically because of schooling or a job. You don't see people just moving there randomly. I mean, we'd love to have more of it, don't get me wrong. But, I do typically see people moving here because they have a job, they're in school at Hopkins or something like that. So how did it start off? So you're starting to work in the development space. How was your experience there? Was it anything like you thought it would be?
So I worked for this nonprofit, then I went back to school and got a degree in planning with a focus on real estate. And then I moved back to Baltimore again, I think because it was the easiest, because I already had connections here. And I got hired by Bill Streever when he was growing his company here, and just worked there for 9 years with a really fantastic group of people. At that time, we were focused on a lot of the properties around the larger waterfront here. I worked on the Can Company. I worked for a little bit on Tide Point, where Under Armour's headquarters were. I worked in Fells Point on Bond Street Wharf and some of the projects there. So it was really fun.
Wow. And so from there, you're working on these projects, and now your next steps. How did you get to MCB from there?
So I did a brief 10-year stint. I had my own consulting practice when I was raising my kids. And then I met Dave through another friend of mine. And we worked on something where I kind of hired MCB. He said, "Why don't you come work for us?" So that was 4 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's interesting that sometimes, and I see this in what I do, sometimes you work with someone from a third party and you're like, I actually like your work a lot. What do you think of joining the company? Wow. So now MCB, last 4 years. What do you see, practically speaking, when it comes to developments? Because you've been doing this for, I want to say, 15 to 20 years now.
Yes.
So what do you see practically speaking, specifically in the city? Because that's a very good amount of time. You're talking about just before 2008. So right before the first crash, although Baltimore I feel like is kind of in the middle when it comes to all these crashes. They don't go too up, doesn't go too down,
Yes, that's one of our virtues.
right? It's stable enough.
Yes, yes.
So what do you see, like practically speaking, talking about some of these developments that you've done, where do you see developments succeed versus some of the other ones where locally, I'm sure the listeners may be familiar talking about Under Armour, where what they were focusing on, Port Covington, or some other similar projects. What do you find to be the fundamentals of being able to make a development work?
Expertise to solving a challenge or to meet an opportunity. So, for example, I just finished last year a project called the Anolia. It is a 473-bed student housing project for Morgan State University. It was built on a 4-acre site that had been vacant for over 10 years. It had a lot of challenges to it. It was a brownfield. It had a major power line running through the middle of it.
Oh wow.
We had to reacquire kind of the front of the property. But, you know, Morgan State has been growing, their enrollment every year they break a new record. They had chronically been underinvested in terms of housing. So this was a really unique opportunity where we could take something that was a community liability and meet a pressing need of a growing institution by building housing on this vacant site, and then really help to bolster the neighborhood around it. 4 new businesses have opened on the same block since we opened our building.
Oh
So
wow.
it's really thinking about how do we take our expertise as a company. I think Northwood Commons is another great example where, MCB has people that have been in the retail business for 30, 40 years, and they just have a deep set of connections, relationships, and understanding of how to bring retail and grocery stores to communities. Working with Morgan State and other development partners, we were able to make that a thriving new center for the community and for
Wow.
Morgan.
So
So I
looking at,
think,
how did
yeah.
you even say, like, well, this site's going to be great for the Nolia based on all those problems? Like, how did you assess that? Okay, this on Harford Road will be the spot.
Well, I think one thing that has really been critical ever since I was a baby developer is to have an excellent team. Whether that's your environmental engineer, your architect, your civil engineer, contractor, real estate attorney, branding, graphics, interior design. Like, I really strongly believe that you need to assemble the best folks. And I think Baltimore has a great collection of talent in that regard. Like, we're really lucky we have people who are really smart about how to take, challenging projects and assemble a team of people that have expertise in different areas. You're going to be more successful.
Right. It's really not about what you know. In some cases, it's about who you know,
Yes, yes.
and it's if you have the right proactive team with you, you get so much further than just knowing whatever's out there. And I think so many of these projects, like I look at even Reservoir Square and what they've done in that project alone, where they're able to take I think it was called Murder Mall or something,
Yes.
right? And be able to convert it into a space where now you have all the townhouses that were built, and the city has a space in the building down from there as well, and revitalize it to where it's really meant to be. Like that corner it's a beautiful corner. It shouldn't have to be something that hurts the community. It can be something that helps the community. And I think that that's a very interesting perspective that I appreciate. When I look at MCB's real estate's developments, what I see is 2 things. Personally, is I see execution, because a lot of other developers, without getting specific, I've seen a lot of announcements, but then there's getting it done. and also his investment in the vision of Baltimore. When I hear, for example, when I go to a speech with like David speaking, he really believes in the Baltimore market. And I would love to hear, what do you guys believe in so much in the Baltimore market? What is it?
Well, I think it's a great city. It's an affordable city. Where else? I mean, I can literally drive from my house and be at a major theater production in 15 minutes, or I can be at Camden Yards or the Raven Stadium. We have these incredible anchor institutions that are very innovative, and between Hopkins and University of Maryland and Morgan State, that are, attracting talent from all over the world. And then we just have beautiful, I think, architecture. We're one of the leading cities in the country in terms of preserving our, because it's so cool how you've got kind of both sides of Locust Point and Fells Point and Canton and the harbor all. It's almost like a street rather than a waterway, the way it all embraces the water. So it's a pretty special place. And then just our proximity with the airport and Amtrak, you can get anywhere on the East Coast easily. But I also think, having worked in kind of done a lot of work in Station North and other places, we have a very supportive small business community. I think here people really support each other, and we have some very interesting models of that. We're one of the leaders in the country in terms of cooperatively owned restaurants and bookstores and other things like that. So,
Right. I always say about Maryland in general, and I think part of this applies to Baltimore too, is that the state of Maryland is like a mini America in some ways. And
yeah,
like what I mean by that, you go up north to Frederick or you go to Hartford, and then you go to Howard County. And it's like you get the mountains, you get the farms, and you get the city, and you have Baltimore, and you have PG County, and then you have like DC right there. So it's such an interesting spot. And I know for myself, like if I want to go on a camping trip with my family for the weekend with some friends, I'll just drive up to Cumberland area for an hour and then drive
yeah,
back.
right. Or you can drive down to the ocean so easily.
Right. And I could just drive south just past Brooklyn and take a nice hike in the forest over there, like right off the
Yeah,
highway.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah. It's a
so,
great place.
and I think that's something that's missed. Listen, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and sure, there's advantages of growing up in a city like that, but to get to anything, quality of life is better and worse at the same time, because quality of life when it comes to walking to stores might be better, but how long is it going to take you to get to a hike or to go to, camping, to go to any sort of activity or anything, right? You're stuck in traffic. People are very intense. And I actually find that, interestingly enough, I find people in Baltimore, in my experience, to be a lot more friendly and inviting.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this in all, and listen, I'm a real estate agent and I see it in all parts of it. People are willing to talk to you, willing to have conversations. They're willing to share about themselves to you. And where I grew up in New York, I think people are a lot more reserved. And that's personally what I appreciate about the local market, and when I do with my day-to-day business, where people, unfortunately, what I see now, people are scared to invest in Baltimore. And investment groups locally, a lot of them are looking to invest outside of the state.
Mm-hmm.
And what I personally do to tell people to come back is I say, listen, yes, you have to be realistic, but there's people here and you have to treat the people right. I think that's the basis of it all. But if you treat them right and you really work with them, then you will be able to succeed as long as you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think now that I'm working in New York, I'm working on a project actually in Brooklyn.
Oh,
I
wow.
think one thing I appreciate about Baltimore is, a lot of neighborhoods have their own kind of, there's might be organizations and other people that are all working to make their neighborhoods stronger. And I think if you come in thinking you know everything about the neighborhood and you have all the answers, you're not going to get very far. you need to be more respectful of the people that are there and understand that they're going to bring a perspective to your work that you won't know as an outsider, and that will,
Oh,
yeah.
and with that, what do you see in the future? I mean, listen, MCB itself these days invests in other states, to your point. Where do you think the future of development for Baltimore and in general the future of Baltimore is going? I mean, now I know there's some negative news out there when it comes to even John Hopkins having decreasing their workload when it comes to their staffing, and I'm sure anyone out of state that is watching this is aware of some of the struggles that they've faced or that people are facing. What do you see to tell people, hey, no, Baltimore's still the place to be, and and really just in the future, where do you see everything going right now?
Well, I mean, I think like we were talking about earlier, the one blessing for Baltimore is it doesn't have the kind of boom cycles in other cities that are then followed by a big bust cycle. It's much more steady. And I think kind of all the multifamily development that's happened over the last 5 years across Canton and South Baltimore and in the Jones Falls Valley are all kind of a testament to that. I think, the improvements that are being made for at the Mark station in terms of rail service is going to be key. There's such a housing shortage in DC that I think you're going to see more people wanting to live here if they can have a shorter commute by train to DC. And then I think the vision for downtown and repositioning downtown, in our history, downtown has been reinvented about every 50 years, starting with the fire in the late 1800s. And, we're part of the solution for rethinking what downtown can be for the next 50 years. So I think that's going to be key. And I think the steady progress we're making in neighborhoods, whether that's the work that's happened in central Baltimore, where you have census tracts that are showing growth for the first time in a long time, whether that's East Baltimore, there's been 1,500 houses have been vacant houses that have been restored between Amtrak Penn Station and Hopkins Medical Campus. I mean, there's a lot of encouraging signs. And then last week I learned that Healthy Neighborhoods has done this amazing research on kind of the neighborhoods on the edges of the Black Butterfly. There's been 700 houses a year that are being repurposed in those neighborhoods. It's like $5.5 billion of investment,
Wow.
which I don't think anyone has covered that story yet. So,
No, I think we need to open a new, not practically, but a new news network that focuses on good news and bad news, not just the bad news.
yes, yes, definitely.
And to your point there, when it comes to the developments, I think one of the things I've tracked, and I try to track multiple different data points, but one thing I tracked with what MCB does is when it comes to anchoring grocery stores in areas that have deserts when it comes to that.
Yes.
And I think it's so important, whether you look at, I mean, by Reservoir Square across the street, they're working on something there right now, but areas like Cherry Hill or whatever it is where there's deserts, it's such a vital point for residents. I mean, you could go miles without a grocery store. And for some people that live in those areas, the only way to get there would be with the city bus and trying to carry bags. And I think that setup, in the sense where you're setting up the locations for the future. It's not just, all right, we're making a grocery store, right? People are now able to walk there, so people want to live there. And then you open up another development, right? Like Northwood Commons style. And then now all of a sudden, it's the quality of life for the local people for things that maybe should have never been the way they are. Like, why isn't there a grocery store in some of these areas? That doesn't really make sense, right? And being able to repurpose it. And even downtown, I'd love to hear, because I know that MCB has been involved in a lot of the office spaces, whether it be on the harbor or near the harbor. What do you envision specifically for the central business district as that development moves along? what do you envision for the vacant office buildings? How does MCB see that moving along? Do they see the office buildings being torn down and then new developments built on top of it, or something mixed where you're turning those office buildings into something else?
Harbor Place. Um, since I focus more on neighborhoods, I'm not sure I'm the best person to opine on that, but I think he'd be great for a future series.
Beautiful, no problem.
Yes.
And I appreciate that. So, moving forward, what are you excited about coming into future projects or future things that you see going on right now in the market?
Well, I think there's still really incredible opportunities around our anchor institutions. So, I think we've got more projects in the pipeline around Morgan State, which I think just to keep building on that success of kind of marrying anchor institution growth with neighborhood redevelopment there. I think the UMB project that they announced for downtown on the north side of their campus is going to be really critical as part of downtown's broader
Right.
redevelopment, and that's super exciting. And then over on the East Baltimore campus, finishing out the EBDI project there on the north side of the hospital complex. There's just a lot of opportunity there to kind of bring that whole 20-year effort to the next level. And then, of course, at the Hopkins main campus, I know there's a lot of new student housing projects in the works there as well. Um, and then Remington, I think, has been a great story. Seawall's work there,
Yep.
repurposing, underperforming real estate for mixed use has been fantastic. Um, and then, you've got Wanada now working on the West North Avenue footprint. We partnered with them on Reservoir Square, and I think the work they're doing there to really support redevelopment along that North Avenue corridor is critical as well. So I think there's a lot of really great public-private partnerships. Working with we're fortunate we have a state that really invests in neighborhood revitalization. We're probably one of the top states in the country that understands how the state can help support redevelopment, working in partnership with nonprofits and developers. So there's just, a lot of what's happened has been in part because of them. And then with the new leadership at BDC, I think they're going to also be really focusing on what they can do to facilitate redevelopment downtown, but also in Baltimore's neighborhoods as well.
Right. And to your point there, when it comes to development and being able to continue on with the projects, how do you balance the expectation of the project with the local residents that you might be getting some pushback when it comes to rolling out some of these projects?
I mean, I think that one thing I really appreciate about Dave is I think he's very honest about, if a project's not financially viable or sustainable in the long term, it's not, it's not in anyone's interest. So I think, understanding with our retail expertise, we know what it takes in terms of the neighborhood demographics and the population density you need to support, a successful grocery store or other retail. And some neighborhoods just don't have enough people living in them with enough resources to be able to support those. So I think being really honest with people about, what it takes, what things have to happen first before development can happen is, it's a frank conversation, but one that I think is the right one because, everybody wants the projects to be successful.
Right. 100%. And I think that being able to show the vision and being able for the community to really see the vision and see really just look at some of the other projects MCB has done and look what it did to the area. Like I think David mentioned about the project near the Bayview campus, where initially there was a lot of pushback, and then post that development being finalized, and now there's brand new retail spaces and different stores that were brought down there, and really helping a community that's in between a university and then just like industrial complexes all over. I think that brings life back into some of these neighborhoods. In so many cases, I mean, wow, you guys are just involved with so many developments. Talk about the development on, Biddle and Oliver. That's an amazing development that I've walked personally. That's also, I think, in partnership with Rebuild Baltimore, from what I understand.
Yeah, so we were asked by Rebuild to try to help them with a vacant industrial property there, and so we're bringing our expertise in kind of new market tax credit financing and historic preservation and reuse to help them tackle what is really a challenging project there. But we'll hopefully bring more than 100 jobs to complement the work that they're doing with housing and other amenities like the new library there.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Bringing 100 new jobs to the local community. That's amazing. With the entire project, which I know is a very interesting project, and I've spoken to members of Rebuild. I walked the site down the block there. So I think that it's a different perspective, and that you're able to have that integrated into the city. That being said, I would love to, I know where time flies and we're getting towards the end of it. I would love to say, what, who do you see credit when it comes to, this over 15, 20 years of work? If there's someone who was an inspiration or really you would want to give credit to that helped you throughout the entire process.
Well, I've just been really, really lucky. I've always worked with people that I think valued, community. They valued good design. They understood kind of creative financing and economics, and also had a vision for how, real estate is really the means to a larger end, which is a thriving community that has a healthy market that is helping to build Baltimore's economy and make Baltimore a more livable city. So working for people that have that vision and commitment, but also can execute on the kind of fundamentals of real estate. I've been really fortunate there. And it starts with my first job working for Ellen Janes at the Neighborhood Design Center, and then just an amazing group of people, Caroline Moore, Linda Locasio, at Shriver Brothers, and then to work with the folks at the R.W. Deutsch Foundation, Jane and Neil and Mac McClure, and then, to get this chance now to work with so many talented people here at MCB. And of course, Dave is just such an inspirational person. He's also super funny. So, when he's in the office because you can hear him laughing from, 5 offices away. I think he really brings a lot of joy to the work and also just an amazing commitment to Baltimore. So I'm lucky to be working with him now.
That's important. It's always extremely important to have a really good work environment. And sometimes it's easy to see someone on the outside, but you really, I say this all the time, like there's your friends, and then there's when you work with your friends, and you only really know someone when you work with them.
It's true. It's true.
So it's amazing that it's not just that he's a nice person in public, but practically speaking, he's someone that you would want, that people want to work with. For someone that's trying to get into the development space and specifically community development, what advice would you give them?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways to go at that. You can work for a nonprofit. Like I'm on the board of the Central Baltimore Partnership, and there's some really talented folks there that are, Jack Dana, Ashley Wallace, that are working to bring back communities from a nonprofit lens. And then there's, a lot of great developers. I think, Seawall being one of them that are really applying community development from a real estate lens. So I think it's just getting your hands dirty, working on projects, whether you start out as a volunteer or, I know some folks at Seawall started in property management and then moved over to development. There's a lot of different paths to to development. I also know a lot of recovering lawyers who are now developers, so
Oh,
and
really?
architects. So there's many paths since development is really more of a generalist. You have to know enough about everything, but you don't have to be an expert in everything. You just need to know who do you need to have on your team and be able to facilitate them bringing their expertise to what you need.
Right, right. And you really, to your point, you really need to be a visionary and have the team around you that could execute on a practical way and a realistic way that vision. Because sometimes you have developers that are great visionaries, but the practical part of it doesn't really come to fruition.
Yeah. And then obviously, the one thing that MCB really excels at is kind of the financing relationships. Um, we are blessed for smaller developers to have community development financial institutions like the Neighborhood Impact Investment Fund, the Reinvestment Fund, and others who are helping emerging developers with kind of building their financing capability. But that is also key, is really making sure you have those connections to be able to deliver on your
Correct,
project.
correct. Because at the end of the day, like we said throughout, it's about who you know and those people to help you get past the finish line.
Yeah.
Before we finish up, I'd love leaving the floor open to anything that you wanted to share that we may have not covered. I'd love to hear if there's anything else you want to share.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Baltimore is a great place for, it's a supportive place for people that want to start a new business or buy their first house or, become a real estate developer. We're small enough that you can take that step. And I think there's a lot of support here, that maybe you wouldn't find in other cities. So
Correct.
I've been really lucky in my career, to work with wonderful people, get to work in really fantastic neighborhoods. So I hope other people have a similar experience.
Correct. And it's something I just made a social media video about, which is that at the end of the day, there's 2.8 million people in the Baltimore metro. Like, there's people to cater to. You're not in some tertiary market where
Right.
you have to try to find, like, there's people here.
Yes.
You know, it's
Yep.
not building a city so people shall come. The city's here. Now we just gotta, how do we help the people?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Amy, I really appreciate it. If anyone has any questions for Amy, reach out to me. I'll be able to connect you. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's busy with the summer and all, but I really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Take care.